1991, on Staten Island's East Shore, a tragic and gruesome discovery was made. A passerby stumbled upon the lifeless body of a woman, bearing signs of brutal assault, strangulation, and burning. The chilling scene unfolded just after dawn on September 20, 1991, as the victim was found amidst overgrown weeds along a South Beach road. Her lifeless form lay face up, her wrists bound in handcuffs, and her attire partially stripped away. A vacant lot served as the grim backdrop for this horrifying crime. The assailant had unleashed 17 savage blows to her head, and a hammer engraved with the name Lloyd L. was discovered at the crime scene, suggesting its use in this heinous act. Alongside the victim's battered body, authorities recovered 2 gold chains, a ring, a watch, a meager sum of 30 cents, and a pack of Newport cigarettes. Initially, the police faced a daunting challenge as they grappled with the unknown identity of both the perpetrator and the victim, leaving this chilling case unsolved. Though an individual named Lloyd L. was identified, the investigation reached an impasse with no conclusive evidence linking him to the crime. Given the circumstances, he could neither be prosecuted nor exonerated. For decades, the victim remained anonymous, her memory preserved only as the girl with the scorpion tattoo, a haunting reference to the distinctive scorpion tattoo etched on her body. In 2008, the district attorney's office reopened the case, submitting her DNA and dental records to the FBI, but it yielded no new leads. The case was revisited once more in 2019 when Richmond County District Attorney Michael E. McMahon, in collaboration with the FBI, NYPD, and the New York Medical Examiner's Office, employed cutting-edge forensic genealogy technology. During a press conference held in March 2023, Michael McMahon revealed the identification of the victim as 30-year-old Christine B.C.O. Christine had been placed for adoption as an infant and raised by a couple in New Jersey. She resided in Clifton and was employed at a clothing store. Upon discovering her adoption status in 1991, she left home and briefly stayed at the Mount, a Y Lodge in Pennsylvania's Poconos. She had a 2-year-old daughter named Krista Nicole B.C.O. Tragically, both Christine and Krista were last seen at the resort in September 1991. Shockingly, none of Christine's family members were aware of her untimely demise, believing she had been living safely in Florida. Michael McMahon conveyed, "We have already informed Christine's family about her heartbreaking fate, and we are dedicated to locating Kristen Nicole as well, so that we can share with her the story of her mother and the steps taken to bring justice to this case." Despite the tireless efforts of the NYPD back then, the authorities were unable to identify her or locate the perpetrator who inflicted such a brutal and senseless tragedy on her at such a young age. Nearly 3 decades later, through the collaborative efforts of the FBI, my exceptional team of detective investigators, and the NYPD detectives, we reopened the case and harnessed the power of forensic genealogy technology, which was unavailable in 1991 but has proven invaluable in today's world of law enforcement, ultimately providing closure and justice to all those affected by this heinous crime. While the investigation is ongoing, McMahon stated that the investigators believe the perpetrator had a prior acquaintance with the victim. According to McMahon, there is clear evidence to suggest that the culprit was someone familiar with her. Given the circumstances surrounding the case and the manner in which her life was tragically ended, it strongly points to the involvement of someone who had a close relationship with her. This appears to be a crime of intimacy, McMahon explained. An age progression photograph of Krista has been publicly released, and efforts to locate her are still underway. Currently, There is no available information regarding Krista's biological father. If you have any knowledge about Kristen Nicole or any information related to the tragic incident involving Christine BCO, please contact the Richmond County District Attorney's Office at 718-556-7085. On September 16, the 1993, human remains were discovered in the woods behind a hotel located just outside Atlanta, Georgia. The grim find was concealed behind an electrical unit, cleverly camouflaged by pine straw and branches, within a wooded area nestled between what was once a Fairfield Inn and an abandoned medical office. This sinister act appeared to be a deliberate effort to conceal the body, which had already deteriorated significantly due to advanced decomposition. Fast forward to the present day, and the inn, now known as Quality Inn North Lake, still stands, situated less than 20 miles northeast of downtown Atlanta. Following a thorough autopsy, it was determined that the remains belonged to a middle-aged woman. Given the state of decomposition, investigators estimated that the woman's life had been taken somewhere between 2 weeks and 3 months prior to the discovery. No identification was found alongside the body. Despite initial investigations revealing that the victim had undergone extensive dental work and hip replacement surgery, potentially affecting her gait, the lack of further details regarding her identity resulted in a stalled case. However, a breakthrough finally came in March 2023 when the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office made a significant announcement. They successfully identified the Jane Doe as 52-year-old Rebecca "Becky" Burke. This identification was made possible through the application of forensic genetic genealogy, an advanced DNA testing method involving the collaboration of the National Missing and Unidentified Person System and Othram, a specialized company in forensic genealogy dedicated to solving cold cases. Forensic genetic genealogy, a fusion of traditional genealogical research and DNA analysis, plays a crucial role in identifying individuals, both suspects and victims, in criminal cases where conventional identification methods have proven ineffective. The District Attorney's Office has disclosed that these tests successfully linked Becky's remains to a family member, facilitating a deeper understanding of her and her background. Authorities suggest that Becky may have also gone by the last names Mesna or Barnes, with her last known residence believed to be in either the Marietta or Smyrna area of Cobb County, Georgia. A dedicated cold case task force is actively seeking information regarding a potential suspect. DeKalb County District Attorney Sherry Boston is urging anyone who had knowledge of Becky or had connections to the inn where her body was discovered during that period to reach out to law enforcement. Sherry Boston emphasized in a statement, "We are immensely grateful to have finally identified Becky Burke's remains, but our work does not conclude here." Becky Burke was described as a Caucasian individual with long, curly, light brown hair, standing approximately 5'5" tall and weighing close to 130 lbs. If you possess any information regarding the circumstances surrounding Becky's final days, please do not hesitate to contact our cold case tip line at 404-371, 2561. Susan Robin Bender entered the world on November 27, 1970, in Modesto, California, as the sole offspring of Patricia Chupka Bender. On April 25, 1986, at the age of 15, Susan embarked on a weekend visit to her friends in Carmel by the Sea. She strolled to the Greyhound bus station, situated on 10th Street and G Street. While awaiting the bus, serendipity led her to encounter some acquaintances, to whom she disclosed her coastal excursion plans, assuring them of her return in a few days. Following their conversation, Susan made a call from the payphone at the depot. Approximately 10 minutes later, a full-sized 1977 Ford van, colored olive green, pulled up to the scene. Without hesitation, Susan entered the vehicle, marking the last known sighting of her. In the 1980s, it wasn't particularly unusual for a 15-year-old to have a significant degree of independence. Susan's mother, Pat Bender, assumed that her daughter had safely arrived in Carmel and was enjoying herself with friends. However, as the customary phone call from Susan failed to materialize, her mother's concern grew. Consequently, she reported her daughter missing on May 1, 1986. Detectives swiftly arrived at the troubling conclusion that Susan had encountered something ominous. A detective even conveyed to the local newspaper, "We possess compelling evidence suggesting the involvement of foul play in Susan Bender's disappearance." Susan's mother had disclosed to the newspaper that Susan had previously run away twice, but on those occasions, she had promptly returned home. She explained, "We had a few good months together before her sudden disappearance. There were no signs she was planning to run away." She also mentioned an unnamed male individual of interest who was found in possession of Susan's diary, phone book, and clothing. Pat expressed her concerns, saying, "I fear that she may have been targeted by a man the police questioned but never arrested, despite the substantial circumstantial evidence against him." The police consistently held the belief that Susan had not voluntarily gone missing. Detective Richard Ryo, who worked on the case until his retirement in 2000, expressed his grim suspicion in 1987 that Susan was likely no longer alive. In 1999, Susan's mother lamented in an interview, "The police have indicated that there's little they can do without a body." Detective Ryo echoed in that same year, "Susan Bender seemed to vanish without a trace." What's truly baffling about this case is the complete absence of any information or leads over all these years. No one has ever stepped forward with any knowledge of her whereabouts. During 1999, the unsettling actions of two childhood friends from Linden, California, named Lauren Herzog and Wesley Shermantine, drew attention. They targeted young women in the Stockton area and raised speculation that Susan might have been one of their victims. Many of their victims remained unidentified. While authorities couldn't definitively connect Herzog and Shermantine to Susan's disappearance, it was a possibility given that she vanished during the period when they were engaged in their sinister activities. Susan's disappearance seemed to align with their typical victim profile. However, despite extensive investigations into Herzog and Shermantine's crimes, no concrete link to Susan's case had ever emerged. During the 1980s and 1990s, a spree of violence unfolded, claiming the lives of multiple females, with the number of potential victims exceeding 15. Meanwhile, Susan's unresolved case persisted for nearly 4 decades, with investigators maintaining contact with her family and friends, who remained dedicated to keeping her memory alive. In 2021, Sandy Silveria, a close friend of Susan, voiced her concerns, stating, "Where could she be? What happened to her? Whoever is responsible for this must be brought to justice." In October 2021, the Modesto Police Department made an announcement that marked the reopening of Susan's cold case, driven by the determination to finally locate the missing teenager. The department released a statement saying, "Upon re-evaluating this case, we have identified potential avenues for progress, including the application of technological advancements. Given the nature of the crime, we also believe there may be previously unidentified individuals with crucial information regarding Susan's disappearance." Modesto's cold case investigators had been hopeful that the passage of many years since Susan's disappearance would encourage witnesses to come forward and share information. In a statement issued by the police department in 2022, they emphasized the importance of remembering Susan as a child with a family and expressed their commitment to assisting in providing closure after 36 years of unresolved pain and seeking justice. However, on Thursday, August 17, 2023, the Modesto Police Department made a significant announcement. Raymond Lewis Stafford, a 76-year-old individual, had been arrested. Stafford's arrest took place on August 15 in Wills Point, located 50 miles east of Dallas, where he had resided for approximately 5 years. Remarkably, Stafford had managed to elude law enforcement for decades, seemingly living in plain sight. Detectives had obtained an arrest warrant on August 10th, but it wasn't until the following Tuesday that members of the Van Zandt County Sheriff's Department in Texas arrived at his residence and took him into custody. The arrest proceeded without any incident, and Stafford was subsequently booked into the Van Zandt County Jail, facing charges related to Susan's tragic loss of life. Modesto police refrained from providing additional information regarding their assessment of Susan's situation. Stafford, presently incarcerated in Texas and awaiting extradition to California, became a suspect in a manner not yet disclosed by detectives. When inquiries were directed to the Modesto Police Department and the Stanislaus County District Attorney's Office by newspapers and local radio stations regarding the circumstances that led to Stafford's arrest, no responses were received. Moreover, there has been no disclosure regarding the specifics of Susan's fate, the possibility of her remains being located, or the new evidence that prompted charges against Stafford. In an official statement, the Modesto police expressed their gratitude to the Stanislaus County District Attorney's Office, the California Department of Justice, and various Texas authorities for their invaluable assistance throughout the extensive and challenging investigation. They stated, the collaborative efforts of these agencies have played a pivotal role in bringing closure to the case of Susan Robin Bender. Detectives, suspecting foul play from the outset, quickly identified a potential suspect. According to court records filed in Stanislaus County, their investigation led them to link the green van to Stafford, following his arrest on unrelated burglary charges, approximately a month after Susan's disappearance. Notably, Stafford's identity had not yet been made public during this period. During their inquiries, detectives discovered that Stafford had briefly worked alongside Susan's mother, Patricia Bender, at the time. Patricia mentioned the possibility of Stafford forming a connection with her daughter after making calls to their residence. Court documents indicated that Patricia had indeed worked for Stafford for a brief period in 1985 at his security business, and had also admitted to dating him on a few occasions. As a result, Susan was acquainted with Stafford, and it was his rental van into which she had been observed entering at the bus stop. According to her friend, who witnessed the events of that fateful day at the bus station, Susan had entered Stafford's van without hesitation. Furthermore, a woman who cohabited with Stafford during the 1980s disclosed that he had confessed to strangling a female using a cord or wire and burying her near the entrance to Yosemite's Big Oak Flat. Court records revealed that Stafford claimed to have driven to a campground near the Big Oak Flat entrance to Yosemite National Park and dug the grave less than a year after Susan's disappearance. At the age of 38, Stafford entered the race for Modesto City Council in July 1985. During the campaign, he faced inquiries from the local newspaper regarding his criminal history. Stafford responded by explaining that his prior arrests were a result of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, citing charges related to operating an unlicensed private investigator business and carrying a badge indicating he was a private investigator. Despite his campaign's emphasis on policies aimed at protecting children from predators, he was unsuccessful in the election, which came as no surprise. Just 5 months later, in December 1986, Stafford found himself convicted of arson and admitted guilt to making a false police report. In a bizarre twist, he allegedly staged a fake kidnapping to evade appearing in court. In 1994, Stafford once again drew the attention of law enforcement when he was placed on an offender's register under the alias Greg Tunningley for the alleged abuse of a 13-year-old girl in California. Subsequently, new court records revealed Stafford's true identity. Pat, the mother of the victim, disclosed that she had long harbored suspicions that Stafford was connected to her daughter's disappearance, especially after uncovering evidence of a clandestine relationship between the two. Pat revealed, "Since my daughter went missing, I've harbored a deep-seated knowledge that he was the one responsible right from the beginning, but the investigators didn't heed my words." Pat confided that this belief had haunted her for the past 37 years. She continued, "It felt like I was adrift, like I was a living ghost. It pained me to hear others talk about their grandchildren and children." For Pat, the memories of her 15-year-old daughter kept her going. She remembered Susan as an outgoing and funny teenager, just trying to find her place in the world. Throughout the years, Pat never lost hope, but the search for her daughter was an excruciating journey, until now. She expressed gratitude for the system finally taking action, saying, "I'm thankful that the system has finally chosen to step up and take action, instead of leaving me in uncertainty." Those closest to Susan are eager to discover her whereabouts, with the hope of giving her the farewell they believe she deserves. As she faces the final chapter of this ordeal, Pat shared that forgiveness towards Stafford, the person she believes is responsible, was something she had come to terms with. She explained, "I know it may sound unusual, but I've forgiven him for what he did to my daughter. I truly have, because I wouldn't want to carry that burden for the rest of my life." The recent arrest has lifted a heavy weight from her shoulders. Pat concluded, "I'm not looking forward to how the trial unfolds. I just want Susan's remains to be found. My message is a simple one. Start listening to your children, kids." A shocking turn of events unfolded when a 16-year-old girl, residing under the same roof as her parents and younger sisters, was discovered lifeless in her room one morning after going to sleep the previous night. Although her family members had all slept peacefully, the police swiftly recognized the case as a murder mystery. However, despite their best efforts, it would take an astonishing 31 years before the case was finally solved, leaving everyone utterly unprepared for the shocking revelation that awaited them. Fawn Cox entered the world on March 24, 1973, in Kansas City, Missouri, followed shortly by the arrival of her two younger sisters. The Cox family called a modest two-story house in a tough residential neighborhood their home. Fawn's upbringing involved taking on responsibilities as a caretaker for her younger siblings from a tender age, regular attendance at church, and a fondness for swimming. At the age of 16, Fawn seized the opportunity to secure a part-time position at a local amusement park. Given their modest means, her family sought ways to supplement their income, and Fawn dedicated much of her 1,989 summer vacations to work. Her primary role involved manning the cash register and selling tickets for amusement rides, contributing to the family's financial stability. On the evening of Wednesday, July 26th, she concluded her work shift around 10 p.m. To ensure a swift journey home, her mother and younger sister came to pick her up in their car, given the extended commute from the park to her residence using public transportation. Upon arriving home, Fawn promptly retired to her bed, considering her early morning work commitment. Her bedroom was situated on the second floor, where she usually shared the space with her sisters. However, on this particular night, she found herself alone on the second floor. Her sister Amber, who was just a year younger, had taken on babysitting duties for a familiar family that evening. Meanwhile, her other sister, Felicia, opted to sleep on the first floor due to the more comfortable and cooler conditions prevailing there. The night was exceptionally hot, and the only functional air conditioner was located downstairs, where their parents also slept. The following morning, around 9 o'clock, the entire family was roused from slumber by the blaring alarm clock situated in Fawn's room. However, to their bewilderment, Fawn seemed inexplicably unwilling to silence it. Her younger sister and mother decided to investigate and ventured upstairs, only to be met with a harrowing scene. Fawn lay lifeless on her bed, her neck displaying evident signs of bruising and a pulse nowhere to be found. Without delay, her parents dialed for an ambulance, but tragically, their efforts proved futile, as it became apparent that Fawn had passed away several hours earlier. A subsequent examination by medical experts confirmed that strangulation had been the cause of her demise, revealing unsettling evidence of abuse. In those initial hours, law enforcement recognized the arduous challenge that lay ahead in their investigation. Despite Fawn's untimely demise occurring within the confines of their modest home, with its meager soundproofing, her parents and sister had been utterly oblivious to any commotion. There was, however, a plausible explanation. The aged and raucous air conditioner on the first floor had effectively drowned out any other sounds within the house. The sole peculiar detail noted that night had been Fawn's sister's observation of their anxious and barking poodle, although they had initially dismissed this behavior as a consequence of the dog's pregnancy. Upon conducting a thorough examination of the scene, law enforcement officials uncovered several crucial pieces of evidence. Their working hypothesis was that either an individual or a group of attackers had gained access to the residence through a second-story window overlooking the backyard. Adjacent to the house, there stood an aging trailer conveniently positioned to facilitate the ascent to an outbuilding's canopy, which happened to be nearly level with the aforementioned window. The window itself had been left open as a response to the absence of air conditioning on the second floor, making it necessary to combat the stifling heat. Within Fawn's room, forensic experts stumbled upon the initial significant leads: a handful of short hairs, small bloodstains, and traces of semen on her bedsheet. All of this material was subsequently dispatched to the laboratory for in-depth analysis. Furthermore, the investigation revealed several missing items from the household inventory, including radios, a Nintendo game console, and a stereo recorder. Oddly, a number of these items were found scattered on the ground outside the house, suggesting that the intruder had initially tossed them out of the window with intentions to take them, but ultimately abandoned this plan for unknown reasons. Additionally, detectives noted that various items had been removed from a closet in an adjoining room on the second floor. Their working theory was that the perpetrator had concealed themselves in this closet while awaiting an opportunity, with the intention of evading detection until everyone in the house had retired for the night. Notably, it was customary for Fawn's sister to occupy that room, but on the night in question, this was not the case, which likely contributed to the items going unnoticed. The police discovered another strange clue. An old army cap was found in Fawn's room. All her relatives said they'd never seen the girl wearing it, so detectives assumed the killer might have forgotten the cap at the scene. Despite the impressive array of evidence, police were unable to quickly identify the suspects. The problem is that in 1989, DNA forensics was rather underdeveloped, and there were no common genetic databases at that time. Detective Benjamin Caldwell, who handled the case, put forward the main version of what happened in his opinion. There could have been several assailants, and they must have known the house well. Not only did they know how to get to the second floor through the backyard in total darkness, but they must also have known the layout of the rooms. The next step for the police was to look for witnesses. They interviewed neighbors, friends, and relatives of Fawn, but all were inconclusive. The detectives had one weighty problem before them. The neighborhood in which the house was located was very poor and criminal. Various criminal gangs operated there, and their participants were quite difficult to bring to justice. A month after Fawn's murder, the case finally got off the ground. The police had a witness who pointed them to 3 suspects. This witness knew a number of important details that the police never divulged, so his story was taken seriously. The suspects were 3 teenagers, one of whom was in the same class as Fawn. They were arrested and questioned, but the boys denied any involvement in the murder. During a search of one of their homes, police found items stolen from the victim's room. This was enough to charge all 3 of them with murder. But even here, the detectives were disappointed. First, the witness suddenly recanted and stopped cooperating with the police. Second, DNA analysis of blood, hair, and semen found at the crime scene did not show an unambiguous match with the suspect's samples. In those years, experts could not yet establish an exact match of the samples, and all their tests showed questionable results. In other words, the analysis could not confirm either a full match or a guaranteed mismatch. Despite this, the police were able to obtain useful information from one of the detainees. During one of the interrogations, he confessed that he had indeed broken into Fawn's house that night in the company of other boys and stolen some things. He recounted how he made his way to the 2nd floor through the canopy of the canopy and even revealed unknown details. According to him, when he threw a tape recorder out the window, its handle fell off. The boy hid it under a nearby bush, and the police did find the item in that very spot. Except that the young man quickly retracted his statement and no longer cooperated with the investigation, which would have prevented his confession from being used in court. Because of this, the police had to let the men go, and the investigation was at a standstill again. Most likely, the witnesses were simply intimidated, but without their testimony in court, the case had almost no chance. All we know is that one of them spent 8 months in jail for stealing items from Fawn's house. The case has since gone into a long drawer. The police didn't reopen the investigation until the early 2000s, and the first thing they did was upload DNA samples from the crime scene to the CODIS database. It had been created several years before and contained DNA samples from people tried for serious crimes. Unfortunately, no matches were found for the phone killer. The emergence of this database was the result of major scientific advances in the study of DNA. It also allowed police to recollect DNA samples from the 3 original suspects and conduct more advanced tests. This time, experts unequivocally determined that the hair, semen, and blood did not belong to any of them. This was rather odd given the fact that the suspects were found in possession of Fawn's belongings. Detectives speculated that the 3 guys had indeed robbed her house at night, but there was another man with them. He was the one who had abused and killed the girl. All of this raised even more questions. Could it be that 4 criminals entered the house unnoticed, killed Fawn, and just as unnoticed left the scene of the crime? The police still had no answer to this question. Since then, the case has once again stalled. With each passing year, the Fawn family believed less and less that the murder would ever be solved. They continued to believe that those 3 suspects had been in their house that night and could point to the killer, but would never do so. The only thing that could help them learn the truth was a DNA sample stored in the police lab. In 2018, something interesting happened. Amber, Fawn's younger sister, revealed some disturbing details about the crime that she had put into facts unknown to the police on a popular American forum for unsolved crimes. Over the 20 years of its existence, the forum had gained a very reliable reputation, and its participants have helped the police solve several high-profile cases. Amber has been verified and confirmed that she really is who she says she is, so her post is worthy of attention. She herself worked as a nanny from Monday to Friday and was only at home during the day on weekends. The girl slept in the very room on the second floor through which the burglars had snuck in. Accordingly, the criminals would have been immediately spotted. In addition, they would have watched the house and waited until Fawn's mother and her younger sister went to pick up the girl from work. Despite all this, Amber's story didn't bring the case any closer to solving it. But it was already 2018, and the science of DNA research had come a long way. Dozens, if not hundreds, of long-forgotten cases were being solved thanks to new analysis tools. Fawn's relatives saw it all and resented why the police were in no hurry to reopen the murder investigation. They kept talking to detectives about the case, and each time they got the same answer: extended DNA testing requires money, and the police have dozens of cases waiting for funding. But the relatives decided to take the initiative and launched a fundraiser. In 2019, the family wanted to cover the full cost of the DNA samples and also offered a $10,000 reward for any information that would lead to the perpetrator's capture. Due to the extensive media coverage of the case and numerous interviews given by the family, many people who cared responded to requests for help. The family quickly collected the necessary amount of money, but even here they were disappointed. The police department refused to initiate this investigation at the expense of the relatives of the victim. The lead detective explained that there was bound to be a big problem in such a situation. If the relatives of one victim could pay for such tests and expedite the results, then hundreds of other families who have been searching for years for the murder of their loved ones should have the same right. But it is simply impossible to implement such a thing in practice, since only a few laboratories in the world conduct innovative DNA tests, and with such a simultaneous influx of those wishing to do so, their resources are simply not enough. The leading company in this field is Parabon Nanolabs, which we have already repeatedly mentioned in other stories. They have made tremendous progress in the study of DNA, from finding a person's relatives from the smallest genetic samples to creating an approximate portrait of the owner of the DNA. It was this lab that was to take over the study of the samples left in Fawn's bedroom the night she was murdered. The girl's relatives believed that the police were in no hurry to pursue their case for another reason. They were a poor family from a bad neighborhood, and murder was not a priority for investigators there. In an interview, Fawn's sister said that if it had been a murder of a family of rich or high-ranking people, all the necessary investigations would have been done instantly. Unfortunately, they never managed to expedite the process, and it wasn't until late 2020 that the long-awaited breakthrough happened, but the family wasn't ready for that kind of truth. With funding from the FBI, the police did send samples from Fawn's room to a lab there. They began a detailed examination of the DNA and a search for possible relatives of its possessor. It was the semen sample found at the murder scene that they mostly worked with. In November 2020, they were finally able to find the person to whom that DNA belonged. It turned out to be Fawn's cousin, Donald Cox. Of course, such news shocked the whole family. At the time of Fawn's death, Donald was 21 years old, and no one had even considered his possible involvement. That said, Donald was a pretty troubled man and was constantly behind bars. He was tried for misdemeanors, such as theft and possession of illegal substances. Unfortunately, in those years they did not yet take a DNA sample from such criminals. Otherwise, this case would have been solved much earlier. Donald died of an overdose in 2006, but the police investigated his death because certain circumstances seemed suspicious to them. It was because of that investigation that a sample of his DNA was preserved, but it was not entered into the FBI database because the man in that case was a victim. not a perpetrator. Once the experts informed the police of their discovery, they matched the sample with the semen found at the murder scene and got a 100% match. Despite the gravity of this discovery, the relatives have received an answer to a question that has plagued them for 31 years. But there remained one very important point in the whole story. A great deal of evidence indicated that the three original suspects had also been in the phone house that night. It was now becoming clear how the perpetrators knew the house and the family's routines so precisely. Donald was a frequent visitor and knew all these nuances. However, the police closed the case and no new charges were filed against the three men. Fawn's sister said she saw no point in trying to get a confession out of them. Even though the men had been present in the house at night, they may not have even witnessed the murder itself. Donald may well have stayed in the house alone and only then attacked Fawn. Felicia added that the three suspects had already paid for their act throughout this time. While the case remained unsolved, the entire neighborhood was 100% certain of their guilt. Because of this, they were treated very negatively, with all the consequences that would follow. According to Sister Fawn, their lives were effectively ruined. In addition, after the case was closed, it turned out that the police had originally learned about the suspects from the family of one of them. Relatives noticed a Nintendo set-top box among his belongings and remembered that this was the one that had been stolen from Fawn's house. It was on the news, and everyone in the neighborhood already knew the details. In any case, it is simply impossible to prove their guilt, and the relatives of the victim finally know the name of the killer. He lived for 17 years without any punishment for what he had done. In all that time, as if nothing had happened, he communicated with his family. But eventually, his addiction to illegal substances drove him to his grave, and he was no longer a threat to anyone. Share your opinion on this story in the comments, and don't forget to like the video if you like it. Thanks for watching. Megan McDonald, born in 1983, relocated to Middletown, New York, with her parents at the tender age of 7 months. She shared a close bond with her sister Karen and 2 younger brothers, with whom she experienced everything from Little League games to movie nights. The sisters, Megan and Karen, were inseparable best friends. Known for her compassion, Megan often rescued stray animals and displayed remarkable warmth even towards adults. As Karen entered college, she found love with James Hwan. When James nervously faced the prospect of meeting Karen's family for the first time, 16-year-old Megan effortlessly alleviated his anxiety. Her genuine warmth and hospitality made him feel like an immediate member of the family, setting a comfortable tone for their future interactions. Megan possessed a vibrant imagination, evident in her decision to name the family cat Pumpkin, a choice made to ensure James Hwan felt fully integrated into the family dynamic. After graduating from Burke Catholic High School in the class of 2000, Megan pursued her education at SUNY Orange in Middletown. Opting for the proximity to her home, Megan found joy in attending the community college. Fueled by her affection for children, she contemplated a career that would allow her regular interaction with them. In 2002, Megan and her family faced a profound loss with the unexpected passing of her father, Dennis McDonald, a retired detective from the New York Police Department who succumbed to a heart attack at the age of 47. Despite the tragedy, the family continued to unite, gathering for Christmas that year, unaware that it would mark Megan's final holiday season with them. A poignant family video captures the moment when Megan joyfully unwraps a box of sweaters, exuding warmth and gratitude as she playfully places the bow on her head, showcasing her genuine and gracious spirit. Megan secured her initial job around the same period, marking the commencement of her efforts to rebuild her life following her father's passing. Karen fondly remembered the moment Megan bought coffee with her own hard-earned money, a proud reflection of her accomplishments in that inaugural job. Realizing she could forge ahead, Megan made a significant decision a year after her father's passing. In March 2003, she took a leap towards independence by signing a lease for an apartment near Middletown in the quaint town of Wallkill, New York. Eager to embark on her journey as an adult, Megan's newfound freedom was unfortunately brief. On March 13, 2003, Megan, employed at the American Cafe in Galleria Mall, diligently waited tables from 10:00 a.m. to 3:00 p.m. Following her shift, she strolled to a nearby bank's ATM for a cash withdrawal. At precisely 3:10 p.m., she was spotted on Greenway Terrace in Wallkill, New York. Despite being invited to a birthday party by acquaintances, Megan declined, citing plans with other friends in Middletown. Little did she know that this decision would shape the events to come. Later that evening, Megan spent time at a friend's house, engrossed in the TV show Friends from 7:30 p.m. to 12:00 a.m. When she left her friend's place, she mentioned the need for a good night's sleep to avoid being tardy for work the next day. Unbeknownst to her friend, this would be their final meeting. Rather than heading directly home, Megan made a detour to attend a birthday party in the Greenway Terrace area of Wallkill. As she waited in her car, two departing friends engaged in a brief conversation with her. Megan informed them that she was expecting to meet someone. At 12:30 a.m., just after midnight, Megan McDonald was last seen alive by anyone. Megan failed to appear for her afternoon shift at the American Cafe, prompting concerned colleagues to leave voicemails on her phone. Growing anxious as she remained out of touch, her friends and family observed her unresponsiveness to calls and text messages. Fearing the worst, Megan's mother enlisted Karen to check on her. Initially annoyed by what seemed like irresponsibility, Karen and James' once concern deepened throughout the day, compounded by their inability to locate her despite living 2 hours away from her last known whereabouts. As daylight transitioned to night, their apprehension intensified, culminating in devastating news the following day. In a shocking discovery, a man and his nephew stumbled upon a distressing scene at 229 Bowser Road in the town of Wallkill. Horrified to find the lifeless body of a young woman lying at an unusual angle, they promptly dialed 911. Upon arriving at the scene, the New York State Police successfully identified the deceased individual as 20-year-old Megan McDonald by examining her driver's license. A subsequent autopsy revealed that Megan had succumbed to fatal injuries inflicted by a blunt object. Detective Brad Natalizio provided additional details, describing the location near Bowser Road as a narrow dirt trail culminating in a secluded cul-de-sac within an isolated field. The detective surmised that Megan must have been acquainted with the person who led her there, given the perilous nature of venturing alone to such a remote location at night. It became apparent that Megan was in the company of someone she trusted, who tragically took her life. Investigations by the state police uncovered that Megan owned a 1991 Mercury Sable, although the vehicle was not present at the crime scene. Consequently, a search was initiated to locate her car. Local law enforcement sought media coverage to aid in unraveling the mystery surrounding Megan's death. Days later, a tip led the police to the Kensington Manor apartment complex, where Megan's vehicle was discovered parked. The examination uncovered that the vehicle had been stationed there since the early morning, approximately at 8:00 a.m. on March 14th, indicating an extended period of presence. It was apparent that the driver hastily departed, leaving behind a trail of clues. Investigators amassed a substantial amount of evidence, seizing numerous items pivotal for a comprehensive DNA analysis. More than 700 items were meticulously bagged and stored for further examination. It was deduced that an individual occupied the driver's seat of Megan's car and inflicted a fatal blow upon her. Despite initial efforts, the case stagnated without additional leads, leaving Megan's fate shrouded in mystery for an extended period. Detectives Brad Natalizio and Michael Carletta, who were familiar with the missing woman due to their upbringing in the area, recognized Megan's case as the most significant local enigma in a considerable span. 2 decades later, On the somber 20th anniversary of Meghan's tragic demise, her case gained prominence on the widely watched TV show Dateline. The broadcast sparked renewed efforts in solving the mystery. In 2018, the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit took charge of the investigation, seeking to profile the suspect and formulate a coherent theory. After a meticulous review of crime scene and autopsy photos, coupled with an exhaustive examination of case files containing over 800 leads and interviews, their conclusions aligned with those reached at Troop F Barracks on Crystal Run Road in Wallkill. The assailant displayed the classic traits of narcissistic personality disorder, as outlined in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This includes a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, fantasy behavior, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy, manifesting in various contexts from early adulthood. Detectives Natalizio and Carletta took on the case in 2017, armed with valuable insights from local narratives they had absorbed during their upbringing. Natalizio, who shared Meghan's age and hailed from Orange County, had a long-standing commitment to solving her case. Even after changing jobs, he continued to pursue justice for Meghan, fostering collaboration across different departments and engaging the community. Having joined the NYPD in 2006, Natalizio's personal connection to the case was deepened by his wife, a registered nurse who worked alongside Meghan's mother. This familial tie served as a motivating factor, particularly as his wife encouraged him to resolve Meghan's case upon any promotion. The investigative duo initiated the process by re-interviewing all witnesses and suspects. Their journey led them back to Kensington Manor Apartments, where they uncovered intriguing details. Around 12:30 on the night of Meghan's tragic demise, a witness noticed her distinctive white car with a black stripe. What drew the witness's attention, however, was the thunderous music emanating from the vehicle's system, prompting her to investigate further. Meghan's vehicle had a dark Honda Civic hatchback tailing it as they both navigated the large loop within the complex. The persistent thumping music echoed through the surroundings as both cars circled back. This established a timeline indicating Meghan's last known presence at 12:30 a.m., narrowing the window for the crime to have occurred between 12:30 a.m. and 8:00 a.m. The prevailing theory suggested that two individuals in the trailing car somehow infiltrated Meghan's vehicle, with one assailant in the back seat and a companion in the passenger seat, exerting a level of control over Meghan, possibly on a psychological level. The journey led them to a secluded field off Bowser Road, a hidden spot known for gatherings of teenagers and young adults. The entrance was discreet, easily overlooked by the uninitiated, yet the assailant navigated unerringly, aware that the isolated area ensured minimal risk of detection. The silence in the surroundings was so profound that even the distant hum of a train engine could be heard from the spot. An altercation possibly ensued between Meghan and the assailant, escalating into a violent rage. The assailant repeatedly struck her with a blunt object in this desolate location. The passenger, seated beside Meghan, likely found themselves in a state of shock. Despite the gravity of the situation, the assailant managed to dissuade them from reporting the incident to the authorities. After disposing of her remains, the two individuals returned Meghan's car to its parking spot before fleeing the scene. Investigative efforts focused on examining items taken from Meghan's vehicle, with the cybergenetics private lab assigned to re-evaluate the DNA in 2023, testing the latest forensic technology advancements. Lamar Advertising, a company committed to promoting Meghan, generously supported her visibility for several years. They sponsored 7 billboards along State Route 17 in Orange and Sullivan counties, as well as on Interstate 84 in Orange County, encouraging individuals with any information to step forward. In the pursuit of justice, the NYPD Detectives Union and the FBI took significant steps by offering rewards totaling $220,000 for information related to Meghan's case. Before conclusive DNA results emerged, the distinctive Honda Civic with a powerful audio system came to the forefront. This led investigators to identify 2 suspects, one notably being Meghan's ex-boyfriend, Edward Hawley, while the second suspect remained unnamed in public records. Surprisingly, it was later disclosed that the second suspect had passed away in 2010. An intriguing detail emerged as investigators uncovered a voicemail left by him on Meghan's phone at 1:24 am on March 9, 2003, featuring loud music in the background. Financial records added another layer to the mystery, revealing Meghan's account balance of $21.92 after depositing $1,158.33 into her HSBC account. However, on March 10, she overdrafted the account by $869.92 in 3 transactions. In his interviews, Hawley confessed to owing Meghan $300 for her assistance in purchasing a sought-after purple 1990 Honda Civic hatchback. This car became pivotal in the unfolding events. On the fateful day of the crime, Meghan engaged in a confrontation with Edward Hawley, a fact he acknowledged in all his police interviews. Additional information surfaced when Meghan's landlord stepped forward. On March 13, 2003, at around 9:00 am, the landlord witnessed a man in Meghan's apartment on Karen Drive, whose identity remains undisclosed in official documents. Approximately an hour later, Meghan dropped him off at his residence on Sheffield Drive in Wallkill before heading to work. The decision to forego the party on Greenway Terrace was intriguingly linked to Edward Hawley's presence at the event. Investigation into the matter revealed that Meghan, in her quest for marijuana, contacted various sources. She made a call at 10:57 p.m., followed by another at 11:25 p.m., but was unsuccessful in securing any substance. At 12:05 am, a witness observed her at the AAT&T gas station on 152 Wisner Avenue in Middletown, requesting a Dutch, slang for a marijuana cigarette. Although her car was parked outside, the witness noted no occupants. Meghan persistently contacted a second suspect throughout the night. The final call at 12:25 am involved her, picking him up at his residence on Cindy Lane in Wallkill. Seated in the passenger seat, he informed her of his lack of marijuana supply, prompting Meghan to express her intention to obtain it from Edward Hawley. Witnesses observed Hawley leaving the party shortly before midnight on March 13. Just after the clock struck midnight on March 14, both Hawley and Meghan's phones registered signals from the towers in the Scotchtown area of Wallkill. This time frame aligned with when officers suspected Meghan encountered her assailant. Although Hawley acknowledged knowing that Meghan was outside the party, he insisted he went directly home to 66 Sandburg Court in Wallkill. Contradicting his claim, both cell phone tower data and eyewitness accounts placed him near the crime scene. With a history of domestic violence, Hawley had a compelling motive to harm Meghan, owing her a significant amount of money. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit played a crucial role in piecing together the intricate details of the case. One plausible scenario suggested a disagreement between Hawley and the outspoken Meghan, a theory supported by Meghan's sister Karen. The possibility loomed that Meghan and her ex-partner engaged in a heated dispute, resulting in a violent outburst. Meghan's final outgoing call at 12:30 am was to Hawley, who asserted it was a request for marijuana. However, this positioned Hawley as the last person to have seen her alive. Considering his checkered history, his locations at the time, and his failure to disclose his presence with Meghan during the critical time frame, Hawley emerged as a significant and viable suspect in the investigation. On April 23, 2023, Edward Hawley was apprehended by the New York State Police and charged with second-degree murder in connection to the death of Meghan. Hawley, who had lost the use of his legs in a 2007 car crash, was already incarcerated for probation violations related to a narcotics case in October 2021. Now, 42 years old, Hawley would have been 22 at the time of Meghan's tragic demise. As he was being wheeled away in an orange jumpsuit, Hawley vehemently protested his innocence to the cameras, declaring his love for Meghan. His two daughters rushed to his side in a show of support, while the McDonald family, shouting justice for Meghan, expressed their grief. The second suspect in the case reportedly took his own life, and the police have yet to release his name. Regrettably, due to a procedural error by the prosecutors, Holly was released without bail. This mistake stemmed from a failure to present the case to a grand jury within the required time frame. Despite this, Holly had to make court appearances in June and August. His next hearing is scheduled for after Thanksgiving, and if convicted, he could face 25 years to life in prison. Megan's family found solace in the identification of the man responsible for her untimely death. While Karen lamented that her younger sister would never witness the series finale of her favorite show, Friends, the family expressed gratitude for the chance to bid her a proper farewell. They acknowledged the rarity of such swift recovery of the body, contrasting with cases where closure is delayed.